All right, my name is Stefan. I'm from Paul Munns Instant Lawn. Been there for 30 something years. Yeah, we're a lawn company. You've probably heard of us. Trying to technically go the difference between Paul Munns and Munns. I think most of you would have heard either way about the one family, four kids. One of them separated from the family, and Paul Munn back in 1986 did something, I don't know what it was, but got disinherited from the family. His sister's got $1 million, he got a racehorse, didn't win a race, and he started Paul Munn. So we've been around for that time. We specialise mostly in lawn and lawn products, but today I'm not going to talk so much about products as I'm going to talk about lawn problems that you'll experience when you're out doing what you do. And so I'm obviously talking to quite a big crowd, and I'm guessing that some of you have a lot of experience and some maybe not as much. And so if I talk into things that you know a lot about, that's great. You can chime in. I'll allow a little bit of time at the end for questions if you have any. Yeah, the focus today will be on lawn issues. And where I'm going to come from is that in our business we specialise in solving these sort of things. We invite customers to come to us and ask for help in solving problems. And so you can imagine that there's not a lot of business around doing that. We get a lot of people coming in asking what's going on, what's wrong with my lawn, how do I solve it, can I do it myself, what do I need to do? And so most of the time when someone goes to the effort of doing that, they've tried a lot, they've done some things, and things have either worked or not worked, and we end up walking them through some solutions. So what I'm going to bring to you today is just a bit of some information around common issues and common problems, our methodology about how we go and resolve those, and I think you'll find it pretty useful for you and what you do out in the field. I imagine that a lot of you would do just lawn mowing, but some of you might do garden work as well, and a lot of you probably would look at issues and work towards solving them as well as as a extra service that you offer to solve problems for customers. So when we talk about solving problems, we ask our customers, we survey them, and we've surveyed them a lot. What do you want from a lawn? And the answers are obvious. People want green, they want low maintenance, they want drought tolerance, they want durability. And when they don't get those things, it's because they've got dead and dying patches in their lawn. So that generally is the indicator that something's wrong. And so we look to answering what are the problems that you can experience, how do you diagnose them, and more importantly, or most importantly, how do you treat them? We find a lot of people end up self-diagnosing problems, and we spending money on things that don't solve the problem. So we find that there are 4 categories of problems, and this won't be news to anyone, but they include disease, fungal disease, pests, and pests just include your beetles, insects, mites, weeds, issues around poor management, how customers manage their lawns, how they water them, how they use them, how they misuse them, and then existing conditions like drainage and shade and other poor soil and things like that can weigh into. And you'll find that all 4 of those issues, there's probably a stack of categories that fit into those. Just kind of explain those a little bit just now. All of those will make your lawn look dead and dying in patches. And funnily enough, that's the description we get from people when they come to us. They say, often with a photograph on their phone, my lawn's got dead and dying patches in it. And you'll often walk over lawns, I guess, too, and find dead and dying patches. But if all those problems represent dead and dying patches, how do you know what the problem is? Because if your charter is to restore lawn health, and you're treating things and charging customers money to resolve problems, and you're not actually targeting the problem that exists, you'll end up potentially with unhappy customers and hot-shotting what may or may not be the issue that you're at dealing with at hand. So that's when we keep information about our customers and the issues that they're dealing with when they come into our shop, or when we go out and do on-site consultation for them. This is what customers say their most popular problems are. I've got dead and dying patches because I've got beetles, or because I've got a disease and I need it solved, or I haven't maintained it properly and I know it and help me do it, or my neighbour killed my lawn. And you'd be surprised how often someone's got a conspiracy theory on their neighbours killed their lawn. I've heard stories of writing in Roundup on lawns and stuff like that. When we actually take data on customers' lawns, we look to, when they come in with their photographs and things like that, we ask for core samples, actual pieces of grass with about 150 ml of soil, simply because we find that the problem, while you get the indicators of dead and dying patches on the surface, the story is most often told in the soil underneath it. What is the problem? It's you can't really know without having a look. So when we actually take information from customers, these are the most common issues that we find. We find non-wetting soils are a big issue in Adelaide. We find that issues like shade and excessive wear and drainage and other cryptic things come into play. Poor management, turf mites, beetle larvae disease, they're the ones we're going to see more of than anything, and these are the actual results out of per 100 by percentage. When someone comes in with a dead and dying patch in their lawn, that is by far the #1 reason for that happening. The next one is through conditions that exist on site. We'd be surprised, especially in years like this year, how drainage comes into play, big issue for lawns. Poor varietal choice, someone just got the wrong lawn, it doesn't matter what you do, it's not going to do what they need it to do. Poor management, that's the next one. You've probably seen a lot of it, turf mites, huge in Adelaide, that changes all the time. That's getting more and more, that's kind of getting bumped up the scale as we go on. You'll see quite the contrary, beetle larvae, beetle problems only represent 7% for us over tens of thousands of customers. And it's interesting that that is the go-to for people as a whole. And it might be the first go-to that you guys might go to as well for resolving issues. And the last one is disease. We can often find ourselves in a bit of a stoush with customers who want to hear a complicated answer that requires complicated chemicals, and the problem is water, not getting to the root zone. We've often dreamt up releasing a product in one of those fancy hose-on bottles that the Nutrod guys are showing, with just water in it, and calling it some fancy name like oxydihydride or something like that. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so it's interesting to look at information like that, because if you're going in to solve problems, the #1 problem that should be treated as a go-to would be a wetting agent, because by far and away, if that were the only thing you were going to do, that would be solving 39% statistically of issues caused by dead and dying patches, being water related. And I'll get on to what causes that and how you treat that in a moment. But I don't know if that resonates with you guys about non-winning soils.
Can I just ask a question? Once again, it's with my garden. I had probably the best order lawn.
Yep.
Actually, you got another, which I used a bit of that. No, actually, I got that from you guys.
Okay.
Right, but the fertiliser I used, which is the one I use on Adelaide Oval, was very burny. I'm sure after I put that down, I started having problems. I've got sand around it, and then where it gets the sun, and then I still water it where it doesn't get as much sun.
Yep.
and all of a sudden I watered it in, did all the right things. I'm a bit of a stickler, but so my sewer water, I've lost over probably 60%. It's and obviously walking up and down hasn't helped during the winter because it's but probably 60%. I'm assuming, I think it's from the, but I use that same fertiliser on everyone else. Luckily enough, it didn't, because I would have been in big trouble if I did that to other people's lawns. But I'm thinking, I'm not 100% sure.
Unless you know it's fertiliser, because if your burn as a result of it will be pretty quick. It will be a next day.
No, it wasn't the next day. It was a slight. It was over 5 middle of winter it started progressing.
Like a fertiliser. You can take that one. Definitely not fertiliser.
What's that?
Not fertiliser.
So you guys do it if I come down with a patch.
Yep.
You're at Brighton, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. That's how you do it. So that the story. I mean, it's been an unusual year. Buffalo hasn't even come out of winter dormancy yet because of all
No, how much is it? What's the charge?
No charge.
Okay. But
that's the sort of thing that happens every single day. Like that story is a common story. How you solve that will be through a process of elimination, and we'll.
So why is there no charge?
Well, if you come to us, we help you with that. We create some goodwill. You might come back. Who does that?
Where does animals and pets damage sit there as well?
Yeah,
it's a common one.
It is, and you'd put that in here because it is a huge issue, and that
especially with dying patches.
Yeah, and if you've got say for instance you have a buffalo lawn and it's only got surface stolons, no underground rhizomes. You do your internet research, you decide that's the best one for you, put it in full sun, you traffic it with lots of dogs, or a dog even. Buffalo has its limits, and if you wear it out on top, it's slow to spread as it's tropical grass. Doesn't come back quick. So pet traffic, like we'll ask that question, have you got pets on it? Because it's, especially if you have more than one, pet pressure or traffic can be an issue, massive issue.
Just on that, what's the most pet-resistant one?
It's kikuyu in the sun.
Yep.
When you combine pets and shade, you've got a difficult combination because you get back to buffalo, and buffalo's not particularly pet tolerant. Kikuyu in the sun because it's so resilient. I mean, most of your lawns, well, percentage-wise, probably 60-70%, probably more of kikuyu. So in good nick, it'll regenerate the fastest. Yeah. You'll never kill a kikuyu from the surface. One of the problems I mentioned was water repellency. You can see in the slide there, water feeds up on the surface, runs away. I talked about this pretty extensively last time I was talking to you guys. That is just a huge issue. Does anyone know what causes water repellency in lawns?
Compacted ground.
What's that?
Compacted ground.
Compacted ground does one? Yeah.
Watering in the past, you haven't kept it up, so it's sort of with the heat and stuff, it kind of kills itself. And
yeah, that's called the re-wetting potential of the soil. So soils can wet. Once they're wet, they stay wet, or when they dry, they're hard to get wet again. And so if you're not consistently watering your lawn, sandy soils especially, anything with more than 50% sand in it.
everyone's like, I'm at Phoebe Park, which is a very sandy area, and I had a lead come through once for aeration. We went out and had a look, and it's like, because their lawn was fast, it wasn't growing well, and it's like, it's just needs a wetting agent, just empty your laundry water on there and you're good.
Yeah, 100%. You can see that the surface tension builds up in those in the soil. Also, fungus can cause it. Fungus from tree roots, especially natives. If you're dealing with lawns around native vegetation, eucalyptus trees, they have a fungal association on their root zone that is got a high turnover in the soil. As it dies, it leaves an oily residue in the soil and coats the soil, makes it go non-wetting. Wetting agents dissolve that and wash it through the profile. If I had a choice between using a wetting agent and a fertiliser, I'd use the wetting agent, because like the Nutrol guy said before, as great as Nutrol products are, or any fertilisers are, and as essential as they are, lawns can live, it'll survive without it, but it can't survive without water. And often
You're not going to get the fertiliser in there if it's not waiting.
100%. What carries the water, what carries the nutrient to the root zone. So often the response is to water more, but of course watering more doesn't solve the problem because it's continuing to run off. So if you want lawns to grow faster, so that you're mowing them more, although I hear that you're very busy and don't necessarily want this to happen. When it slows down a bit and you want lawns to grow faster, wetting agents will definitely help you out there simply because they achieve that target. Does anyone know the difference between a wetting agent and a water retention agent? And have you ever used the both in combination?
One breaks the surface tension to let it in, the other one is something that helps keep it attracted so it doesn't just run right through.
That's right, yeah. And you can get both, and you can use them in cycle, in combination. One straight after the other, one to wet the soil profile, and then another one to hold it in there. So they're key to lawn health. You want to get water down to 25 mil or 50 mil even below the surface. That takes 25 millimetres of water per week on average to keep a kikuyu and a cooch lawn healthy during summer in South Australia. So that's the benchmark. When customers are using sprinkler systems, MP rotators, RVN type sprinklers will take about an hour to do that, to deliver 25 mil. Regular sprinklers, probably half that time. So water repellency is something that you want to do, as is charging laptops, which is a low battery, which it's about to go flat.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Hey, if I get a question, the type of water,
Yep.
like what I'm thinking is bore water versus mains water.
Yep.
What
So
sort of differences do
often,
they provide?
mostly when you're dealing with bore water, perhaps down on the western suburbs in the Semaphore Way where there are lots of bores in, it's the mineral content and specifically salt content that you need to watch for.
Yep.
Does anyone have issues with salt in lawns that you've been aware of? You know what it does? It's specifically poor results for kikuyu. Kikuyu hates salt. If you have salt and you are using bores, gypsum is one of the solutions. Gypsum replaces salt in soil profiles, so it leaches the salt out and replaces it with calcium carbonate, which is the gypsum. So if you ever have those situations where you want to cleanse the soil from salty water, a liquid gypsum or a fine grained gypsum does more than just break up clays. It actually has a purification process in the soil.
So that water repellency will happen even on a sandy land
100%.
over time.
And it'll be exacerbated by vegetation, by organic build-up. If you buy the more organic soil there is, the content that there is in the soil, when that breaks down, that leaves behind an organic residue itself, which needs to be managed. So you'll often find if you dry a potting mix out to bone dry and try and wet it again, it doesn't wet, and you go, how's that possible? It's all organic, and that's the reason. It's because organic residues are water repellent when they can decompose. So yeah, sandy loams themselves can have low re-wetting potentials. I think you mentioned this when they dry out. So when a sandy loam dries out, even one that you've just bought, you can put water on top and sometimes see it sit on top, and that'll depend on the consistency of the soil or how much sand's in it, where they got it from.
You're right with an old potting mix, you can put it in there and you think you're watering it and it's just beating, you're just running down the side of the pot.
Yeah, and you've got nothing. And you think you've ticked that job off, it can't be water because I've watered it, but it is water. And that's where digging the core sample tells the story. So many times people bring in a core sample and it's bone dry and they're asking why is my lawn dead, and it's painfully obvious, but it's the humanity of that is that you naturally tick it off. If I've just got a huge water bill and I've been watering my lawn so much, it can't possibly be water, but it's the nature of that problem. Yeah. One of the other issues that we see a lot of are these. Has anyone had experience with these? Talked about them before. Anyone seen them? What's that?
Bought some fun kind of stuff and we're going to use it.
Yeah. Left-hand side is kikuyu, right-hand side is cooch. Mites are becoming more of a problem in Adelaide. They populate and disperse in warm weather. The hotter it is, the faster they The faster they grow, the faster they multiply. They've got about a 2-week growing cycle, breeding cycle. And what they do is they get into the, see here a runner, natural runner of a cooch lawn, and they sit in these little sheaths where the blades are coming off of the stylons, and they suck the life out of the blade of the runner, so you end up with these little growths like these called witch's brooms. And so this turns to this, and it can't grow, and so it terminates, it stops, and you get these insipid looking patchy lawns, and no amount of water and fertiliser fixes that problem because they breed at a prolific rate. In kikuyu, it's not as tight, it's the same thing. It's like there should be about a 2 centimetre gap between every blade that comes out, but in this, that's almost a real life size. You get that terminating runner where it's trying to grow but can't, and so it stops, sends a little bumpy run around. Once again, with mites, they just don't go away. They just get worse, and you've got to treat them. And our experience of treating them is changing month by month almost. Someone mentioned Thumper. Who was that? You? Yep. Thumper by itself won't solve mite issues because Thumper is a systemic chemical that gets into the plant. The mites eat it and they die from eating it. But nymphs, young ones don't eat, and eggs, of course, don't eat. And so the problem persists. And then, so there's been new chemicals released. There's another one last year called Malus duo, which is a combination of Thumper and another chemical with an ovicidal action which kills the eggs. With cooch, it's easy to get it out of kikuyu. That's actually relatively simple because it's so open. But with cooch, these little tiny witch's brooms, we've found, doesn't matter what you use, they live in there and you can't get chemicals into them. And so they just persist. You spray them and you keep spraying them with the one chemical, you end up with chemical resistance. The populations that survive become resistant to the chemical, and then now you've got a mite problem that you can't get out. And so if you begin doing a mite program, if you identify mites, we've got resources on how to identify them. You need to use a multi-chemical strategy, one that has several modes of action to kill them. So there's Thumper, there's Malus duo, there's Waldo, which are all available for Schedule 6 or less, which means anyone can spray them. You all should have chemical tickets when you spray them for customers, but that's another story. SA Health are getting a bit tighter on that stuff these days, especially with chemicals like these, which have off-target damage if you're not careful with what you do. So expect to see them, and there are. We've found our latest research into dealing with these problems is you've actually got to physically remove these stylons by scalping the lawn to ground level before you start your spray program, because it's only in doing that you physically remove old growth which harbour them, and then when new growth comes out which has been affected by them, you can treat them and the chemicals actually do what they need to do and can make it where they need to go. Not so much with kikuyu, but definitely with cooch. It has to be combined with both a physical strategy and a chemical strategy. So
you automate your machinery after scalping them, so you then don't go put them in someone else's lawn?
100%. You guys are can potentially be the ones that are moving them from side to side. Yeah.
So when you're scalping, you bring it down to nothing.
Yep.
Aren't you almost eliminated it when you do
No,
that?
because you'll have eggs in the batch. Just doing that by itself, you would think.
Yeah.
We've spent the last 18 months trying several different pilot approaches attacking that exact problem. You can't get them out of cooch without incorporating scalping. Even using wetting agents to reduce the droplet size and surface tension, it still doesn't penetrate deep enough because you only need to miss a bit. Like even when you're scalping, you need to take all of it, all the green, so it's as low as you can go to get as much as you can out. What was that?
Just back to dirt.
Back to dirt, yeah. Dirt, and then wetting agents to get the if you've got a non-wetting soil, applications of wetting agents into the thatch, remaining thatch, so that can further applications actually get to where they need to go. Delivery of the chemical is critical in solving that problem. So,
How long do the eggs last?
how long do they last?
Yeah.
I should know the answer to that question. Like an actual live egg, once laid, will hatch within 14 days.
Yeah.
If they don't hatch within 14 days, they will be dead.
Yeah.
But the prolific nature in which they spread, like I forget the actual number, but it's hundreds of eggs per mite, and there's, if you looked at a lawn under a microscope, they're probably your arachnid family. It's spider city, like it's
Some lawns it'll be easier to just spray and kill it. And then
Yeah,
pass the lawn.
look, it's one of those things where if you don't know the source, you end up. Yeah, you start again, you get them again. It'd be like trying to knock your house over when you got flies in it. And,
Yeah.
open the door again and you've got flies back in here. Like it's one of those scratch your head sort of problems that, and the philosophy, I guess the thinking with clients with turf mites, especially in cooch, it's more of a management strategy than is an eradication strategy. To promise I can spray them and get them out, you probably won't. You can manage their populations. You may need several years of treatment, several seasons. They're only really active during the warm months, so you might take a couple of seasons of sprays to actually get on top of them to a state where the grass can start to grow again. So if you're walking them in from the golf course, or other common areas where they are, which is totally possible, it's how they yes, there is movement by machinery, but there's also just on the soles of your feet.
I've read somewhere that the records need to be kept of what chemicals are used,
Yep.
and that it needs to be rotated.
Yes.
That was a while ago. What's the thinking now about the best chemicals to rotate?
Yep. So
Let's start with.
the best one to start with is malus duo, and malus duo is a chemical that has only just been released as a combination of the abamectin, which is in the thumper, mixed with another one called clofentazine, which knocks around the eggs. It's you mentioned spray records. Those spray records are essential because there are there are contact issues with chemicals like that for your own personal safety. Like if you don't put the right PPE on with those, there are acceptable tolerance limits, but they're very specific about the long-term implications for you using those sorts of chemicals without proper PPE and without proper measures to stop spray drift. So if you sprayed them and you sprayed in inversion conditions, with no wind in the early part of the morning, the chemical can actually lift up into about 50 metres, move in the wind, and come back down on your neighbour's lawn. And that's not so much an issue with domestic lawns, but it is an issue with commercial spaces where you spray it on your lawn and your neighbour next door with the vineyard gets your chemicals, and they're not particularly happy about that sort of stuff. So it is a requirement of using them that you do, and it includes weather conditions and date you sprayed it and what you sprayed and when you sprayed it. So,
Would you give a copy of that to the owner of the property or the chairperson of the strata group or whatever, so that they could keep an eye on that for changing gardeners? Or
you're not required to by law. You're required to keep it as the spray technician, as the applicator. But I think that things like that are super helpful. I would always pre-supply a label and an SDS sheet to a client where there is some risk of infection. Like if, for instance, Minder Home down in Semaphore has an incredible mite problem, but because of the vulnerability of their clients, you can't just go in and spray chemicals. You have to have a strategy which recognises, that there can be unintended off-target damage that needs to be considered in how you do it. So I would, and go with the top, like do things that aren't required. It only covers you, and it also covers the user of them.
and is likely to knock that on the head if people start doing that and all working in a similar way.
Yeah, I think shared knowledge in this space is important. Where I'm sharing with you today, your knowledge in how successful you are sharing it amongst yourselves is important. I think it's a problem that, if it's not dealt with properly, becomes a problem that can get away on you, and that's not what the industry needs. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions about turf mites?
Any areas they're more readily around, southern, eastern?
No, we've got all over the place. We consult every week, and we just see them everywhere. Like, yeah, there's no rhyme or reason to it. If your neighbours have got, I've seen streets with all of them. Like around the Glengarry area, we get a lot. You get them out of your lawn, but your neighbour's got it, and every cooch lawn in the street's got it. The mites that attack cooch don't attack kikuyu and vice versa. So if you've got, they're different mites, they're from different families of mites, and so you don't get crossed like that. But yeah.
If we mow one lawn that's got it,
Yeah.
how do we make sure we don't bring them over to the next lawn?
Yeah.
Is there a way, or
It's almost
is it
like-
covered with
it's in practical measures. I mean, yeah, to spray chemicals on your mower every time you use it, fine decline is just not a. It's more comes down to managing them effectively when you encounter them. I don't think that you can approach it with a space of responsibility for causing the problem or transferring them. I just don't think it's reasonable to expect that you would do that. I mean, half the time you wouldn't know, and it's like being responsible for winter grass or black beetle or something like that. Back in the day. Yeah. I've had them in my lawn and haven't got them out yet. There's a tip for you.
Is kikuyu more resistant or more?
No. You see it more in cooch than you do kite. Interestingly, the classification, the tarsinoma kikuyu mite is only recently been classified in the last 5 years. It's new. Wasn't even recognised as a species, so they're still discovering insects and fauna like that. So, yeah. But it's easy to get out of kikuyu, and it's all to do with chemical delivery. It's easy to get the chemical into these sheaths. It's not easy to do it in cooch. So, wetting agents are essential. You can't do anything without adding wetters to your chemicals. Black beetle larvae, you've all done them. It is an issue, you do get them. What do you treat with when you get them? What's your go-to? Acelepryn, yep. That's it. That's the only thing you need. 6 months of cover. Apply it in October, you get both the active seasons, which is October and March. You can't miss. If you've applied that, you don't have a beetle problem. Like, it's as simple as that. Safe chemical, unscheduled, doesn't need, like, it's really good, way better than, what was the one before it? What was the Confidor? Baythroid was it. What's that?
Baythroid was.
Baythroid was one of them, but then there was Confidor. What was the active ingredient? I can't remember anyway. So, yeah.
Just use that for lily leaves with solids and stuff. They said don't use that for these.
No, because it actually does kill birds.
They've actually stopped making the Confidor because I can't find it anywhere.
They have for domestic use. You can still buy it for commercial use. So you can get products that have it in it, but they're not called Confidor. So it's possible. In a sense, when you're spraying that, there's no real reason to spray it anymore. I mean, you can buy Acelepryn in liquid or granule. Liquid applications are way cheaper than granule, by the way. So if you're
but you've got to buy $750 bottle.
You do. No, they've just released. They have just released $100 bottle of it. So.
Are they?
Yeah, they're doing that one more.
So for this beetle, better for a chemical or granule? Because you go to Bunnings and you see 10 different brands and you read them all and they're all doing the same thing.
You are looking for Acelepryn.
Okay.
Well, Yates now have one that's powered by Acelepryn. So
That's right. Yeah, that's their drug chemical protect. Yeah, yeah, that's fine.
It's just the same stuff. It's
just a domestic
retail
pack.
one.
Yep. And you can buy the big Acelepryn GR 20 kilo bags or the 750 ml bottle you were talking about. 100 ml bottles of it, but yeah, it does the job. Once again, deliver it with wetting agents. If you can't get the chemical down to the beetle larvae, you're not doing anything. You're just washing it down the gutter. It supercharges its effectiveness when you can put it down at about 50 to 100 ml where the larvae are. If you're digging a hole and taking a core sample of a dead and dying patch and you can't see beetle larvae, it's not beetles. It's as simple as that. A beetle larvae like that can kill in its lifetime about 50 cents worth of lord. So if you've got patches like this and you can't see them, it's unlikely that it's them. And if it is, there are other factors which are coming into the problem. And that often can be the case. It's really just one thing, it's often combinations of things. So getting back to that original statement that I made before about taking core samples. Take a core sample. If you turn that core sample on its side and you drop some water on a dropper bottle, carry it in your vehicle, and it beads up on the side of it and runs off, it's a wetting problem. Even if it's if you find a beetle in there, don't jump to the beetle first thing, because if it's a wetting, if water isn't penetrating, healthy lawns can actually sustain a reasonable population of beetles and beetle larvae without dying. But unhealthy lawns with no water penetration or disease issues or high wear problems with the wrong lawn, or all those factors will be the ones that you want to shoot first before you jump to that. Because just doing that alone, while it feels good, and customers go, yeah, thanks for doing that. If it doesn't solve the problem, then there's not much point to that. I mean, honestly, a lot of times the customers need to walk out with a bottle of that because they need to know that they're doing something, but we often do talk about the need to be a bit more careful than that. Lastly, I just want to talk about disease. Disease is one of the least likely things that you'll find on the lawn. Disease also causes dead and dying patches, just like that photograph, and I'll show you some specific ones. Disease is instant, quick. You'll find disease happens on a healthy lawn generally, and it happens overnight. You'll have it healthy one day and you'll have big whacks of lesions of disease happening very, very quickly. They rarely kill lawns, but they make them look terrible. When you are treating disease, there are two types of chemicals. One is called mancozeb. I don't know if you've used that. Mancozeb is a protected fungicide. It doesn't actually kill fungus or disease. It just puts a layer across the plant to stop it from further degenerating. So it protects the grass from getting further damage, but doesn't do anything to kill the fungus. So it's kind of a fungicide, but it's not. There are better ones to use. There are two out at the moment, and it'll come to me in a sec. They're new. Tombstone is what you should use, and it's a combination of protectant and systemic fungicide. If you get disease, it covers most of them, and it's something that you can spray. If you think it is, it'll cover it. 2 applications, 14 days apart, generally will get most of the common diseases you'll find in Adelaide. Diseases all present uniquely. That's called brown patch. It has a smoke ring around the outside. All diseases actually present uniquely, and you can read them. And so that one, I'll show you a few examples simply because you get an idea that when you see disease, that one's called slime mold. You may have seen that. It does happen in Adelaide. It grows little pustules on the blades of grass. You can actually wipe them off. It makes the grass look black. It's like a powdery muck. You solve that with broom. Wipe it off. You don't need a chemical. Dollar spot literally has patches like that which occur all over your lawn. It's accompanied by a little mycelium which grows on the grass itself. Look closely, you can see that little web of fungus growing there. So they all have little telltale signs, but they're uncommon, and you won't see them very often. So generally caused or exacerbated by how do you treat them? You treat them, one of the ways is preventative. If you're watering any time prior to midnight, between 4 o'clock and midnight, you are creating an environment, especially during the warmer seasons, where they will grow. You create a humidity amongst the thatch. Often customers think, it's the best time to water because there's no evaporation, but actually, while you do save water doing it, you get this microclimate in the thatch of the grass. It just heats up, warm soil temperature, it's humid, passing spores land, and they grow, and you have a fungal problem. So just by not doing that, over fertilising creates positive environments for funguses. So fertilising using solid fertilisers more than every kind of 6 to 8 weeks is probably not ideal. Some people want it, probably not a lot, but that causes it. So there's a bit of an overview. I guess the biggest takeaway is learn to read the signs, and the signs are in the soil. I can't tell you how many times someone's paid us. Did someone say they paid $120 to have a consultant come out to?
Oh, that was me.
That was you? Yep.
Oh yeah, he's coming on Saturday.
We charge double that And I can't tell you the amount of times that you go out and you take a core and you stand there in a couple of minutes and saying you just need some wetting agent, and that's it. Crickets, like so.
Do you make a pay up front?
It's a last resort. We always encourage people to come down for free with a sample, but some people just don't want to.
Can I say, you guys have got a good reputation,
Yep.
but Brighton is not a central location. It's like,
Yeah, I know.
it's a real problem.
I know. It
And
does this,
given
right?
your reputation, it's a shame that you're not more central, because I guarantee you there'd be more people, well, I don't know,
Yeah.
I would have thought more people would have want yours.
We
You
get
know,
it.
it's like, you
We
know,
get inundated with it. Like it's like it's if you can actually get technical help which identifies the problem. Like if you can identify wetting problems, you identify you identify that it's not mites, you identify that it's not disease, not insects. Once you've taken those things out, and you take them out by reading those by walking people through that journey, then you're basically left with physical conditions. You've got too much shade, you've got pets that are destroying it, you've got a drainage issue problem, you've got the wrong lawn. Like they're the conversations that you can confidently have because you've eliminated the problems. You don't need to sell something, you don't need to promote a product. It's simply, and that's a lot of the time, it's the second highest thing. You don't need to buy anything, you just need to change your habits, you need to address the problem. You may need to introduce a kikuyu into your buffalo, but that's the process of elimination, and it gets results, and people walk away having their questions answered, and for you that delivers confidence in the service that you offer, being able to identify and solve and resolve as you go, and it might only take you a few minutes, maybe longer, but it just builds trust in what you offer, and I think that's what people want. Our customers say they want to know that that trust is actually one of the keys of relationship management, and that makes that means that the business that you offer beyond that becomes good business, and the profit that you make becomes a product of offering that trustworthy service. It's a successful formula for us. So that's a bit of a run through. I think I've talked for long enough, 45 minutes. Sorry about that. If you have any other questions, I can answer them for you. Otherwise, thanks for the opportunity to come and chat to you today.
Is that a chemical that would get rid of kikuyu growing through a Sir Walter?
No, it doesn't exist.
Monument.
Interestingly, we go back to your question, monument, you need a 100 meters, 140, it's something like that, buffer zone around the outside of it to spray it.
Yeah, and the data sheet you've got to fill out.
Yep. Monument's not for residential use.
No.
Like it will kill everything just about except cooch, but it's, no, if you've got kike in buffalo, you've now got kike. So that's the real process.
Yeah, I've been flying kike in West Santa Ana for a decade now. It's just every time I scalp, you see it, and you spend an hour just
laughing at you. Yeah.
I have found by accident that if you got a cooch lawn or Tanderina cooch or wood, the really fine stuff, that around about this time of the year when it's dormant and the kikuyu takes off, if you spray it with a diluted glyphosate, it'll kill the kikuyu but not the cooch.
If you know what you're doing and you time that right and you get it just right.
And that's one of the things that farmers do. They use a diluted glyphosate. But I wouldn't recommend it, but it worked for me by accident.
You do an early scalp at the right time of year and the kikuyu wakes up first, so you've got more length of that in a life week past you.
Yeah, it's another way of doing it.
Just to minimise how much cooches they'd actually catch it.
You just got to watch yourself. You don't get a call back with a dead lawn.
I had a customer took that one from like, that makes sense.
That's right.
And it worked, great.
Yeah. Yep.
But kikuyu is very sensitive to glyphosate, so if you dilute it, you kill that. But yeah, do a trial batch first.
What's the mixing ratio?
Huh?
What's the mixing ratio for that?
Oh, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I've got a consultant at home I can ask.
That's right.
Any other questions, guys? Yep. A really broad one. I know what the many questions are, but broadleaf weeds
and
the grasses. winter and summer.
Yep.
At the annuals I'm talking
Yep.
about. It's broad.
I'd go with Spartan. I'd do a pre-emergent program 4 times a year, mid-season, control the problem in a pre-emergent. When you can get the surface ones out with the granules, they'll all have their season. If you put a year cover down with Spartan, it lasts for 16 weeks in the soil. Put it on every 12 to make sure you're got complete coverage.
Yeah, so that's for all seeded things.
Yep.
The other broadleaf there, soursop.
Oh, yeah, good luck with that.
Metsafura and Meathal.
Yeah, not label registered for it, but you can do it. Once again, for us and for you've got to be careful because the APVMA doesn't like giving off-label recommendations. There are lots of things like that to do that you can experiment with and have results, like brush off stuff like that, which is Kemper and things like that have those chemicals in them, but they're not label rated for it. And when you start recommending stuff that's not label tested, you open yourself up to a degree. Especially, if you're own lawn, fine, but when you're doing it for a customer, you won't have a leg to stand on if you cause an issue that is a result of you making choices around those sorts of things. So, yeah, just be careful how you run those things. Best broadleaf control is bow and arrow. It's a new one, new tech. Better than bromoxynil, better than dicamba, safer, less toxic. So,
Can be sprayed all year round.
Like winter grass and all that, all your wheat grass.
Yep.
Some of them you can't spray during summer.
Yeah,
It's actively growing. So.
It's good. Like it's really broad like that, and you can use it on buffalo as well as Coochie, so it's got a good.
So whenever I do a selective herbicide and spray, you just sort of, oh my god, please don't kill it.
Yeah,
everything.
There's something to be said about how you spray. Like use flat fan spray nozzles with air induction. It just makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Using wetters with it makes all the difference. Yeah.
Calibrating pace as well.
Calibrating. Can't be understated.
Get your ratio right.
Yep, get your ratio right, absolutely.
These guys keep all the chemicals there for
Yeah,
broadleaf?
yeah. Commercial rate, keep quantities and all that stuff. Yeah.
And for winter grass?
Yep, even winter grass being an annual, it's definitely best to control that with pre-emergence. And Spartan's such a good one for it.
Can we order online and you deliver?
Yep.
So can you mix your Spartan in with the bow and arrow as one application, or you recommend individual?
I'd recommend individual. You can. I wouldn't get into this. Some things are safe to mix. I don't know that one off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But when you mix chemicals, you can get chemical reactions.
But high sulphur, and you can add to it. And, yeah.
There are some. I just don't know enough. I don't know they're easy to find out, but
Yeah.
probably. But you'd need to. I just need to check that to make sure it's safe.
Save time.
Yeah.
What did you say about the ball work and the salt?
Oh, look, some bores have high salt content.
Yeah.
Even on our farm, we have bore water, which needs to be shandied with river water because it's too salty. Lake Alexandrina is too salty to water out of. It didn't used to be, but it is now. Yeah, it's important to you can get salt bore water tested. Any plant that you've got that has bore, it's a good idea just to get the water sample test done. It'll tell you your DC units for your salt.
Yeah, that's if you go to online.
Yeah. Yep.
Is there a good indication of, so if you rock up and they're using bore water and it's just looking thin and...
You can see it. Like if they're spraying bore water around you, you'll see the salt marks on hard surfaces. And it's a good indicator straight up. If you're seeing lawn that's and won't just be lawn, it'll be garden, but you'll see the stains and you'll see those white crystallised marks on their hard surfaces.
I remember once seeing the contractor at KFC once was spraying stuff around the garden beds, not in the plants and stuff, and I just asked what they were spraying, because it was just pre-emergent. He goes, no, it's just salt water. Because apparently in America they realised when they used to salt their paths in winter to stop it icing up and stuff, the weeds would never grow when spring came, so they just started spraying salt water as like a pre-emergent to stop it from growing. Just a shallow bit on the top to stop anything new. The existing deep-rooted stuff was fine, you just spraying salt water in the area of the mulch and stuff that's not planted.
Yeah, as long as you don't overstay. I wouldn't.
No, I wouldn't either. It's just like,
Yeah.
just there's plenty of chemicals you can get in
Yeah,
there.
that's right. Yep.
How long should you tell a client before they start seeing the effects of chemical spray?
Depends what you use. Something like, and it depends on the season, how warm it is, how warm the soil temperature is. Funnily enough, you'll get, if you fertilise before you spray weeds, it sounds counterintuitive, you'll get a better and quicker result. But typically a week, 7 days, sometimes less. Bow and arrow is quicker. But amoxanil, your typical weed and feed type, traditional broadleaf can be a bit longer, 10 days, but yeah. Yep.
All good, guys? Cool. Thanks, mate. Thanks for